Good morning. My name is Desiree, and I'm your lay worship leader for today's service. I warmly welcome you to First Parish Unitarian Universalist Church in Bridgewater. I've been coming here for 7 years, been a member for about 2, and I am the vice president of our parish committee, as well as part of the choir and the tone chimes. What I love about First Parish, I always say this, is the people. I can't find nicer, welcoming, lovely people anywhere else. You guys make Sunday service and everything I do just so worth it. So thank you guys. Before we begin our time of worship, we do have just one announcement. So for the Christmas Eve service, if anyone is interested in bringing food or snacks for afterwards, just let Heather or I know. You can bring whatever you'd like, but it would be lovely to have some food after the Christmas Eve service. Anyone else have any announcements? They didn't notify me? Okay.
Just a reminder that the Bridgewater State Alumni Choir concert is today at 3. Today at 3 at the Congregational Church Central Square. Okay, if you have any questions, you can talk to me later.
Okay. First Parish Bridgewater is a welcoming congregation. We proudly fly the rainbow flag to symbolize our welcome to people of all identities, ages, and backgrounds. If you're new to First Parish, we hope you enjoy your experience this morning. We encourage you to fill out the guest book at the table at the rear of the sanctuary, making sure to include your email address to receive church updates. For newcomers joining online, please see the sign-up link posted in the chat. We invite all who are here in person to join us after the service for a time of fellowship in the Upper Parish Hall. This service is being hosted via Zoom and recorded for Bridgewater Cable TV. The camera is turned off to protect your privacy during the sharing of joys and sorrows. In the event of an emergency or evacuation drill, please leave the building through the main sanctuary doors, or should you need a ramp through the School Street entrance to my left. You are all welcome here. Thank you for joining us, and your presence makes a difference. We're now going to begin our time of worship with the prelude. is going to light our chalice. So please join me in reciting our chalice lighting words. Okay. We light our chalice to mark this sacred hour as we gather in this beautiful historic sanctuary, both in body and in spirit. We connect to the many generations that have come here to explore the divine. Let us join our hearts and find the holy in our relationship to each other. It is time to share worship together. Please rise in body and spirit, and let's join our voices for the affirmation of our covenant. To invite Tom St. Thomas up to light our Advent candles.
We had an Advent candle in my house where I grew up. And I remember it, I kind of remember lighting it, but I more remember it when it wasn't lit. Because it was in the dining room, and it was a reminder every time you walked through the dining room of what season it was, and that you were waiting and that you were anticipating. And I don't know, it's kind of funny to think about it. I never really thought about it that much until this week when I was going to make these remarks. And it was just it's such a humble symbol. It's just a piece of fir tree and some candles. I mean, how much more humble can you get? But it grounded us, and it made us understand waiting and anticipating. And I was going to tell another story, but that's probably enough. But anyway, I fondly remember having an Advent wreath in my growing up time with my family. So.
Thank you, Desiree, for starting us off, and thank you, Tom, for those personal reflections. And I'm glad that we can bring that tradition into our sanctuary for those who have fond and moving recollections, and for those like me for whom lighting an Advent wreath is a newer tradition, started in adulthood. But I feel the same way about ritualizing this time of expectancy and waiting, and especially waiting with hope for goodness and peace, love, hope, and joy, even in the darkest of times. In the spirit of this season, our opening words are from Sophia Lyon-Foss, who was a pioneering religious educator in our Unitarian tradition. And her words are called, "For so the children come." For so the children come, and so they have been coming, always in the same way, they come, born of the seed of man and woman. No angels herald their beginnings, no prophets predict their future courses, no wise men see a star to show where to find the babe that will save humankind. Yet each night a child is born is a holy night. Fathers and mothers sitting beside their children's cribs feel the glory in the sight of a new life beginning. They ask, where and how will this new life end? Or will it ever end? Each night a child is born is a holy night, a time for singing, a time for wondering, a time for worshiping. Let us worship, let us wonder, let us sing. Our opening hymn is O Come, Emmanuel, number 255 in the gray hymnal. We're going to sing verses 1, 2, and 4, and they'll also appear on the screen in the sanctuary. Please rise in body or spirit. Now is the time in our service for the sharing of joys and sorrows, those matters of great personal significance that touch us, our families, and our loved ones. If you have a joy or sorrow, please come to the front and light a candle. If you'd like to speak, please keep your sharing brief at this time so the ritual moves smoothly. You may also choose to light your candle in silence. Online participants are invited to share by typing your joys and sorrows in the chat, and a volunteer in the sanctuary will read them out loud. This weekly tradition, our sharing of joys and sorrows, is a ritual of empathy, a time to feel with one another. Let us hold all that has been shared, spoken and unspoken, in the wellspring of our hearts during a time of sacred silence. And we'll move into that silence with the sound of the gong. To begin our prayer, I have words from the poet Adrienne Rich. My heart is moved by all I cannot save. So much has been destroyed. I have to cast my lot with those who, age after age, perversely, with no extraordinary power, reconstitute the world. Spirit of life, source of this existence, gracious God, in the face of a broken world, in the face of broken bodies, in the face of the unfolding violence that continues to harm and take our people, in the face of senseless hatred and division, may we be the ones who cast our lot with all those across the generations who reconstitute the world. May we be the ones who act with humility and courage in our hearts, with peace and hope in our souls, and with love in every word and deed, that we may bring about the beloved community at last. Amen. Our song of prayer is number 34, and we'll be singing the first and third verses. Please remain seated, and again, the words will appear on the screen. Though I may speak with bravest fire.
Once upon a time, a baby was born, even before that baby was born, there were people waiting and wishing and hoping for that baby. The people who were waiting and wishing and hoping for that baby didn't know exactly what that baby would be like. And so they wondered. Would the baby have a smile so warm that it could melt the coldest snow and ice? Would the baby have a voice so strong that it could shake the very mountains? Would the baby be so courageous that all would be comforted, even during the most ferocious storms? Would the baby show the world so much love that peace would settle into even the most hardened hearts? But even as they asked these questions, as they imagined what the baby might be like, the people who were waiting and wishing and hoping for the baby already believed that the baby would indeed have a warm smile, a strong voice, a courageous spirit, and a loving heart. And they weren't wrong. When Jesus was born, his tiny body was wrapped up to keep out the cold. He was laid down on straw in a trough that was used to feed the animals inside of a barn. His young parents, proud and exhausted, had been forced to take a long journey far from home. The parents of Jesus were two of the people who had been waiting and wishing and hoping for him to be born. But there were many others who had been waiting and wishing and hoping for Jesus to come. These people saw hurt and suffering in the world, and they believed that this new baby Jesus could use his voice to spread a message of love and peace. And they knew it would take courage for him to do so. But Jesus wasn't the only baby that people have waited and wished and hoped for. People also waited and wished and hoped for you. Once upon a time, you were born. And even before you were born, there were people waiting and wishing and hoping for you. And those people who were wishing and waiting and hoping for you didn't know exactly what you would be like. And so they wondered, would you be kind? Would you be brave? Would you show love? Would you spread peace and joy? But even as they asked these questions, as the people who were waiting and wishing and hoping for you imagined what you would be like, what kind of person you might grow up to be, they already believed that you would be kind and brave and loving, that you would help ease the suffering and hurt of others, and that you would spread peace and joy in the world. And they weren't wrong. Truly, each night a child is born, is a holy night.
Thank you, Lisa, for that beautiful reading, and Denise for the perfect accompaniment. I just have to say, it is true that people were waiting for each one of you. I know that because I know we were waiting for you. Beyond time and who was born first and all of that stuff, this community was waiting for each and every one of you to bring your gifts of kindness, courage, and love, and to join in our shared ministry of bringing about a more just and peaceful world. For that is our ministry. And now is the time when we give of our treasure to support that ministry and also to support the work in the world of a community organization that shares our values. And so for December, that organization is South Shore Foster Closet. They provide free clothing, shoes, diapers, and other essential items to South Shore foster children. And do remember that if you'd like the entirety of your gift, if you'd like to make a special designated gift to that organization, you can make your check out to First Parish, UU Church, but put South Shore Foster Closet in the memo line, and the directions are here in your order of service. Our morning's offering will now be given and most gratefully received. This morning's reading comes from the civil rights theologian Howard Thurman. Look well to the growing edge. All around us, worlds are dying and new worlds are being born. All around us, life is dying and life is being born. The fruit ripens on the tree. The roots are silently at work in the darkness of the earth against a time when there shall be new lives, fresh blossoms, green fruit. Such is the growing edge. It is the extra breath from the exhausted lung, the one more thing to try when all else has failed, the upward reach of life when weariness closes in upon all endeavor. This is the basis of hope in moments of despair, the incentive to carry on when times are out of joint and men have lost their reason, the source of confidence when worlds crash and dreams whiten to ash. The birth of a child, life's most dramatic answer to death. This is the growing edge incarnate. Look well to the growing edge. Thank you, choir and Denise. What joy to have such a full, multi-part choir. It sounded terrific. So, my message for you this morning begins with something a little different. It's a vocabulary lesson. During my summer reading, I learned several new words, and 3 of them I found interesting enough that I wanted to write sermons about them. The first word I already shared with you way back in September at our water communion service. Does anyone remember our vocabulary word from way back in September? You didn't know you'd be getting a pop quiz this morning. Let's see a hint. So there's a lot of ritual in that service, a lot of tuning into, why we come to church, what we're seeking. The first letter is an H. I'm not hearing it yet. Heart. No. You already know that word. This is a vocabulary lesson. Okay, I won't hold it against you. I really didn't expect you to remember. In fact, I had to look it up again when I was writing the service. The word from September is hierophany. Hierophany. Does anyone remember that? Hierophany. So I already know the answer to my next question. Does anyone recall what hierophany means? Any guesses? So the word has been around for some time, but it was sort of elucidated as a religious concept in the 20th century by Mircea Eliade. I think I'm pronouncing that right, who was a scholar of comparative religion. And he wrote a lot about this concept of hierophany, which is a manifestation of the sacred in the material world. Okay, remember that. And next week, I'm going to give you a heads up, all those who are present. Next week, I'm going to be introducing the third word on my vocabulary list. So do plan on being in attendance and listening, because I may be planning a final exam for the end of the church term. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Back to today. Has anyone figured out what today's vocabulary word is? Yes, you got it. There's a big hint on the cover of your order of service, that word printed in bold, natality. Natality. Interestingly, in this season, when we celebrate the birth of Jesus, Michaela, our office administrator, mistakenly put nativity, but the word is actually natality. They're related. And I had never heard or seen the word natality, as far as I can recall, until my eyes were drawn to the cover of this book that was facing outward on the philosophy bookshelf of the Harvard bookstore. Natality. Is it just me? Do you know the word natality? You know the word natality? You know natal. Do you know natality? You do know natality, okay. Even if we haven't heard it before, we can roughly figure it out. It feels familiar. The root word is natal, and it's common in medical terminology, as in prenatal and neonatal care. So anyone want to give a go at a specific definition? The study of being pregnant. Jeannie, you're a doctor, right? Yeah, right? Yes, natality has something to do with birth. And, we've been singing and talking and praying about birth, so that's a good guess there. Given that natality has something to do with birth, the dictionary definition of that noun, natality, not the adjective natal, but the noun natality, the definition is disappointingly limited and reductive. According to Merriam-Webster, natality means simply birth rate, the number of individuals born in a population in a given period of time. Natality, birth rate. I am not sure I can spin a sermon out of that. As it turns out, that sparseness, that brevity, is one of the main points that Jennifer Banks is making in her book, Natality, which is subtitled Toward a Philosophy of Birth. Birth, writes Banks, is humanity's greatest underexplored subject. In the introduction to her book, she traces what she calls the second-class status of birth as a subject of concern in human intellectual traditions. And I would add, especially in Western intellectual traditions. To clarify, those traditions that Banks is concerned with are the humanities, and not so much the sciences. Human beings have discovered and come to understand quite a bit about the biological mechanics of birth. But biology is perhaps the only area where birth has gotten due attention, medicine and biology. It's the metaphysical understanding of birth that is lacking, the philosophical and spiritual significance of birth that has gone underexplored. On the other hand, Banks contends, death has been humanity's deepest existential theme, and hence the prioritized subject of Western philosophers, theologians, writers, and thinkers. It is a given, writes Banks, that humans are mortal creatures who must wrestle with their mortality. Think about what it means to be mortal, how that impacts the way in which we live our lives. Birth, she goes on, recedes into a hazy background. So birth and death are the two events that bookend every human life. All human beings share this in common. We are born and we die. As we struggle to figure out how to live in the time between those defining events, we give far greater consideration to the death ahead than to the birth behind. And this imbalance is made utterly clear when I returned to the dictionary and looked up the different entries for mortality, and natality. In Merriam-Webster, natality has just the one terse definition, birth rate. In comparison, mortality has 6 entries, 6 listings for mortality, and death rate doesn't even come until the 5th one. The first one is the one I think about the most when I think about mortality, and maybe you do. The first definition given for mortality is the quality or state of being mortal, the quality or state of being subject to death. Given that these concepts, these bookend life, it seems logical that there might be a corresponding definition for natality. Shouldn't there be? The quality or state of being natal, the quality or state of having been born. Not everything is born. We are the ones who are born. What are the implications of that? What does it mean that no such definition is offered, really, in any of the dictionaries that I turn to and that Jennifer Banks turned to? It suggests to me, on the whole, that human beings perhaps haven't been encouraged to give conscious attention to the deeper implications of our birth in the way that we do about our death. We don't actively reflect on our condition as natal creatures, as beings who have been born, and what that means for our lives. And I'm guilty of this too. Just shy of a year ago, I delivered a sermon that I called Mortal to the Core. In it, I suggested that our mortality is one of, if not the animating force that can give our lives shape and meaning. Because we will die, and we do not know just when, the possibilities for our lives are finite. And so we must make choices about how best to live in the time we have. This is a wrestling with mortality. Until I happened upon this book, it never occurred to me to offer a sermon on what it means to be natal. I have thought about it, in fairness, but it just never I never thought about using that as a concept, that there was such a concept to preach about. I didn't have the vocabulary to do so until this word cried out to me. So inspired by Jennifer Banks' work, I want to spend the morning by paying that overdue attention to the spiritual significance of our natality. And this is a big topic. So I decided to start, because just as this is toward a philosophy of birth, this is just a very spare introduction to this big topic. I decided to look at it through three lenses, three spiritual lenses: the lens of mystery, the lens of miracle, and the lens of magic. So let's begin with the mystery of birth. After I gave birth to my oldest daughter, Amelia, I became somewhat of a birth junkie. I was fascinated by the enormity and profundity of the experience I had just had. I felt transformed by it in ways I couldn't quite put into words. And my fascination with birth led me to pursue training as a doula. A doula companions expectant parents through late pregnancy and birth, providing emotional and physical comfort and encouragement. And during that relatively brief time that I was working as a doula, I was present for just shy of 20 healthy live births. Each time the baby made its first gasp for air, I felt in my body, I felt the energy in the room shift. Without fail, the hair on my arms stood on end, warmth flowed through my body, tears pricked the corner of my eyes, my chest pounded with emotions too big for words. The expressions on the faces of the new parents, whether they were first-timers or old pros, could always and only be described as amazement, because something amazing had just happened. A new being, a one-of-a-kind and spectacularly formed new human had arrived in our midst where it had not existed before. It arrived to bring untold gifts, to widen the circle of human kinship, to grow our hearts in love. The sterile hospital environment in which this amazing event transpired created a strange contrast, nearly as strange as a stable in a manger hosting the birth of a divine king. The hospital setting supports the physicality of birth with all of its equipment and fluorescent lights and uniformed staff coming and going. By no means do I wish to suggest that there is anything wrong with this. My own two daughters were born in hospital, and I am forever grateful for the attentive medical care we received. It's just that in my experience as a doula who had more space to witness this sort of spiritual side of birth, the hospital setting overlooks the mystery of birth, the ineffable, the sacredness of birth. It ignores the potential for birth to be a profoundly spiritual experience. In the presence of a brand new life, we may feel our connection to the deeper currents of the wide universe, the emergence of life on earth, then human beings, and each new generation, each new person, over the span of millions and billions of years. Time and mundane things slip away in that moment. When a new life opens its tiny mouth for its first breath, the energy of the ages becomes palpable in the room. For a brief moment, we feel ourselves connected to the grand cosmic story of all creation. It is a story we cannot fully comprehend or put into words, shrouded as it is in mystery and wonder, limited by the limitations of our own intellect. The poet Khalil Gibran famously wrote that Children are the sons and the daughters of life's longing for itself. Children, a new baby, is the son or daughter of life's longing for itself. We know this longing, but we don't know why or from whence it came. We know only this, that life longs for itself, and that each child born is an answer to that mysterious longing. We cannot fully understand it, but we can feel it. For me, that's mysticism. That's what a mystical experience is. And I believe this mystical experience of birth matters and should be encouraged, supported, and promoted, studied, and explored by theologians and philosophers. And here's why. Because when we experience birth as a sacred event in the great unfolding of creation, and each child born as an answer to a great cosmic longing, we then understand that each and every human being is a hierophany, a manifestation of the sacred. What would the world look like if we recognized and honored every single human being and every living creature who ever is and has been and will be as a manifestation of the sacred? What would our human interactions look like? How much more loving and peaceful would our world be? How much closer to the beloved community of our dreams, of our prayers? Some of us are more inclined than others to mystical experience. Fair enough. The more practical among you may be less than inspired by my exploration of birth as a sacred event in the mystery of unfolding creation. So I will try another tack. I will try to convince the pragmatists among us that all human births are miraculous. A tall order, convincing the pragmatists of miracle. But I like a challenge. We are in the middle of the season of Advent when Christians turn their expectant attention to the impending celebration of the miracle of Jesus' birth. According to Christian teaching, this was no ordinary birth, but rather that of a divinely manifested child, the Son of God, the divine incarnate, sent to dwell among the people, the ultimate hierophany. The miracle of Jesus' birth could be understood as a contrast to the mundane births of ordinary people like you and me, conceived and born the regular old way. But for Unitarian Universalists, who by and large have moved away from supernatural notions of the miraculous, the idea of the divine birth of Jesus, the attention paid to the miracle of a birth, can be an invitation to explore the sacred and miraculous nature of ordinary births. And I'd like you skeptics to consider the concept of a natural miracle rather than a supernatural one. Even Merriam-Webster allows for this. More entries for miracle than for natality. And the first listing for miracle in the dictionary is an extraordinary event manifesting divine intervention in human affairs. This is the kind of miracle most UU skeptics dismiss, the kind that defies the laws of science. But here's the second definition: an extremely outstanding or unusual event, thing, or accomplishment. An extremely outstanding or unusual event, thing, or accomplishment. Does the birth of an ordinary human being fit this bill? You might argue that birth is not an unusual event. You wouldn't be wrong. It doesn't take any special skill or status to reproduce. No annunciation of angels is required. Roughly 385,000 babies are born across the world every single day. That adds up to over 140 million births per year. Far from unusual. but outstanding? Maybe. 140 million births may sound alike, but when you consider all the potential babies that might have been conceived and born and never were, it's actually not. The odds of any one person being born at all, the odds of me or you or you or you or you or you being born, as one writer put it, is infinitely tiny. About a decade ago, a polymath by the name of Dr. Ali Benazir attracted attention on his blog when he attempted to crunch this number. The science journalist Robert Krulwich summarizes Benazir's project this way. Think about yourself. You are here because your dad met your mom, then your dad and mom conceived you. So a particular egg in your mom joined a particular sperm from your dad, which could only happen because not one of your direct ancestors, going all the way back to the beginning of life itself, died before passing on his or her genes. So what are the chances of you happening, of you being here? Dr. Benazir did the calculations and determined that the chances of anyone existing are 1 in 10 to the power of 2,685,000. That's 10 with 2,685,000 zeros after it. You are totally improbable. If you think better in images than numbers, Dr. Benazir offered this illustration. Imagine there was one life preserver thrown somewhere in some ocean, and there is exactly one turtle in all those oceans, swimming underwater somewhere. The probability that you came about and exist today is the same as that turtle sticking its head out of the water in the middle of that life preserver on one try. You, my friend, this is me talking, you, my friend, are a miracle. So is the person sitting to your right, the one to your left, in front and behind, so am I. How often do you treat yourself as the miracle that you are? Or the strangers you passed in the aisles of the grocery store, or the clerk who checked you out, or the jerk who swiped your parking space despite your obviously blinking signal? What would the world look like if we treated ourselves and every friend and stranger we encountered as the miracle that we are? With what reverence and gratitude would we receive each day we are given, knowing how rare and precious a gift it is to exist at all? How rare and precious a gift it is to have been born. How much more just would our world be? How much closer to the beloved community of our dreams and our prayers? Much as the word natality called out to me from the bookstore shelf, Jennifer Banks was struck by it while perusing a manuscript during the course of her work as an editor for a university press. Like me, she was fascinated by birth, but she was not familiar with the term. She soon learned that the word natality was coined as a philosophical concept by the 20th century political philosopher Hannah Arendt. Arendt is best known for her work on totalitarianism. She was a German Jew who fled Nazi rule. Her life was marked by the dramatic forces of death and destruction that came with the brutality of the Nazi regime, the devastation of World War II, and the death camps that took the lives of more than half of the Jewish people. Yet, unlike her academic predecessors and contemporary counterparts, Arendt did not turn to death. Death was all around her, but she did not turn to death as the deepest existential theme. Rather, she turned to birth, and she called it the supreme capacity of man. This was, 80 years ago, so man as in human. She turned to birth as the supreme capacity of man and viewed it as the miracle that saves the world, the realm of human affairs, from its normal, natural ruin. Jennifer Banks summarizes, because we all were born, Arendt believed, we are always all capable of beginning again, of starting something new through each human action, the most prized of capabilities in Arendt's estimation, action. Arendt never gave birth to children of her own. The natality she explored is grounded in human reproduction, but not reduced to it. Natality is the capacity to birth not just babies, but all new possibilities through creative action. Every human being is born out of that capacity and is born with that capacity to give birth, to act creatively. Arendt called birth the supreme capacity of man, and for the purposes of this morning's message, I'm calling it our power of magic. In the face of destruction, breakdown, loss, and death, we have an extraordinary capacity to begin again, to birth new possibilities, to make new relationships, to build new communities, to design new art, to think new ideas and share them, to offer new beauty, to shape new cultures, to give new hope. Arendt understood this capacity as the ultimate form of freedom, the freedom to act which is inherent in all human beings by virtue of our having been born, by virtue of our natality. Much as natality has been obscured in human intellectual discourse, it has been present in the spiritual teachings of our UU tradition since the beginning, and we heard it, as I mentioned, through our readings and songs today. Sophia Lyon Foz uplifts it. Each night a child is born is a holy night. The words of the poet Adrienne Rich, which can be found in our hymnal, turn to it. I have to cast my lot with those who age after age perversely, with no extraordinary power, reconstitute the world. Howard Thurman, who widely influenced the UU movement, directs our attention to it. Look well to the growing edge. All around us, worlds are dying and new worlds are being born. All around us, life is dying and life is being born. The birth of a child, life's most dramatic answer to death, this is the growing edge incarnate. Look well to the growing edge. Natality, the capacity to be born and to give birth, birth of all kinds, this is humanity's greatest capacity, our most creative gift, our magic. What would the world look like if every human being acted in accordance and with confidence in our remarkable capacity to birth new possibilities for our world, new possibilities for justice, healing, and peace? What if we all believed in the magic of our shared natality? How much more beautiful would our world be? How much closer the beloved community of our dreams, of our prayers. In this season of celebration, we are called to bear witness to a singular, miraculous birth. Yet let us also bear witness to the mystery, miracle, and magic of all beings who are born and who birth and who will be born and who will birth. Let us celebrate our natality. And we will do so by singing a song of celebration, a song about the possibilities of each new generation. Soon the day will arrive, a song from contemporary Jewish tradition, number 146 in the gray hymnal. Please rise and embody your spirit. And the words are always now, as unless you hear otherwise, will be on the screen. so with reverence for the sacred mystery of the emergence of all beings, with gratitude for the miraculous gift of our own very precious existence, and with resolve to use our power to birth a new world of peace, justice, and beauty for all. The people sang, Amen. Away from my microphone too soon. It's time to extinguish our chalice with the traditional words we use each week, and I believe Hadley will be doing the extinguishing. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Thank you. Big thanks to Denise this week and always, but December is a big and demanding month, and Denise takes on all the challenges with great enthusiasm and joy. We're so lucky. We're so lucky for all the steadfast contributors to worship who quietly do all the things. Lori is our Zoom host. Jan is always up there videoing us. Alan, who upgraded our system for the screen, and our lay worship coordinators. It's just such a great group of folks to work with. Thank you, one and all. Our time of worship has ended. Our time of fellowship will begin. Coffee hour will happen in the parish hall. I would most welcome the opportunity to greet you, and I'll be waiting at the top of the center aisle if you'd like to recess that way and come say hello. I would enjoy that.